What is a finance transformation?
But I guess if you break it down, it's a transformation of finance. It's a change. But what I always find is kind of wrong is people make very quick assumptions about finance transformation. It's like I would say finance transformation is not necessarily about offshoring service centers. It's not necessarily about ERP replacement. It's not necessarily about operational automation. Those are the kind of three things that people assume when you say finance transformation. Oh, it must mean outsourcing. It must mean
or
ERP,
systems implementation.
or systems implementation. But to me, that's starting at the wrong point. That's like saying, to somebody out there, what are you doing? Well, I'm building. What are you building? Well, I don't know. I'm just building.
Yes.
It's like transforming what from what into what.
Yes.
And what I think is, what I would say is, finance transformation is one of the vehicles of finance strategy, and we don't tend to have finance strategy. We're not very strategic.
No.
I was speaking at a conference once on a room of CFOs. There were about 100 CFOs. I asked them to put their hand up and say who does their strategy for their finance function in the same way they approach business strategy. And only about 4 or 5 people put their hand up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real shame because strategy isn't difficult. Or that strategic process isn't difficult. I know, that's right. And I've had occasions in the past where I've spoken to CFOs, and one CFO I went to talk to about starting up a finance transformation, and he said the first thing was he didn't want to call it transformation because then people would have too high expectations.
Yeah.
Second thing he said, when I started talking about, well, what's your vision for finance? Because that's the starting point. He said, "Oh, I don't really want consultant speak." And I was like, "What?" He said, "We just want you to go and change stuff. It needs transforming, so you could just go and transform it." It's like, well, how do you know where to?
Yeah, how do you know where you're going? If you haven't decided where you're going.
And the thing is, what I've kind of demonstrated in one or two of my blog articles is that if you do that strategic review, that thinking, and you start with the vision and the mission, what are we all about in finance? What do we want finance to look like? Then you end up with a different kind of transformation.
Yes. And what indeed does the rest of the business need finance to be?
And it's that link into the business strategy. So I give you a good example. I once went to, it's a little bit unfortunate now, actually, because it was Southampton Football Club, who aren't doing so well at the moment. But when they were still in the Premier League, I actually went to and interviewed for them. And they had this business strategy and a finance transformation that really tied in with the business strategy. Yes. And they had this mantra that went through the whole business, treating Southampton Football Club as a business. And it was Champions League ready in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And that was pervaded the whole business. So every area of the business, and it's a very simple concept, Champions League ready. And we might unkindly laugh at that now, but they had that vision. And that even applied to finance. So they were like, what would finance look like if we were in a Champions League ready business?
Yes.
What would it be like in finance? Would we have different systems, different processes, different people?
What does good look like?
What does good look like? And it comes back to, I don't know if you've heard of Tom Watson, who's he was one of the IBM founders.
Oh yeah.
And someone asked him, because he led to IBM from being like a couple of $1 million to being like billions. And someone asked him, what's the secret of your success? And everyone was expecting him not to answer and say, no, there's no secret to success. Yeah. But he answered straight away, and he said 3 steps. He said, first, we had to understand what the done business looked like. What will it look like when we've done a good job? Like, what do you say? What will good look like? What does the done business look like? So they went about sketching that. And then secondly, how does that done business act? So if you sort of picture that business that is complete and is what you want it to be, how is it acting? Then he said, step 3, we had to act like that now.
Right.
In stages, obviously,
Yes.
increasingly,
Yeah.
but that became the aspiration. If that is the done business, if that is what we're aiming at, that is how we have to act.
And that requires every person
Yeah.
in the roles. The CFO will be one of them,
Yeah.
to understand
Yeah.
what that role is in
Yeah.
that done business. That's a good phrase. Andy, that's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. That's very insightful. It's always a pleasure to talk to somebody with
It's
as
been
much
a
experience
pleasure for
as
me
you.
too.
So yeah, absolute delight.